Okay, so thanks for doing this, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got there in the end. I'll tell you what though, I genuinely meant it when I said it. It was worth it to see the word snafu written down.
Oh,
So
good.
you gave me your email address and you gave me the wrong email address. And I emailed and I was like, yeah, God, he's pretty slow at getting back to me here. And then I think, I don't know, did you bump it to me or did I bump it to you after a while that it kind of had
I
sat and
think
nothing had
I think I
happened?
hit you back up on Instagram.
Yeah, you were like, "Oh, I just wonder what stories this is," and I was like, "Yeah, man, I emailed you like 2 months
Yeah.
ago," and you were like, "Oh, I gave you the wrong email address." But I think just to see the word snafu written down, just like because I've heard it not in a long time, but seeing it written down and all this has been worth it just for that.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
that was
appreciate because
gold.
I made another one later on. I was spinning up to get the Zoom link up yesterday, and I roll over to my computer at 2, and then I just realized how much I saw your email, and I was like, I screwed this up.
Yeah. Now, in fairness, I waited for like I think 15 minutes, and I was like, right, he's I was like, he's obviously not coming, so I got to do bath time and bedtime or
Oh,
whatever with Sloan, so it worked out all right. I didn't
oh,
have any guilt, so that was good.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
a kid.
Yeah, yeah. She's like 9 months old.
Oh, congrats, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. She's like outrageously entertaining. Like at
I
the minute,
bet.
yeah, she's like we have two dogs, and she we showed her how to, like tease them with a toy, like how to do tug of war basically with a toy. Like
Yeah.
they're both incredibly docile with her, like they're amazing with her. But she has now taken to like finding their toy and picking it up and shaking it. So she's made the connection between the toy, shaking it, and then having the enjoyment of them trying to pull it off her. So like, yeah, she has that level of intelligence, but doesn't have the level of intelligence required not to like put her hand in her own nappy when it's full, or not to, like that kind of stuff. Like she's
Yeah.
making certain synapses are firing and others are just a bit dull still. Like I think it's
Yeah.
like selective development where she's like, but it's fun putting my hands in there. And it's
It's
like,
warm. Yeah, it's gross.
oh, gross.
That's really
Um,
cool though. It's neat
yeah.
watch all our friends are having kids, and it is neat to watch just how they learn. It's wild.
Oh, it's insane. Like little things, like like okay, some of it is kind of worrying. Where like she'll pick up a phone and like start tapping the screen, like just because
It
I
just
suppose she's just copped on that that's what it does.
yeah, watches you do it or whatever.
Yeah, but like like we wouldn't be on our phones that much around her. But I don't know, it's bizarre. But like even I bring her in, so I go down with her first thing in the morning when she wakes up, and she has a little thing that she sits in, like a kind of an office thing,
Hmm.
and there's all like toys in it or whatever. But as soon as I put her down now, she looks up immediately to where the Amazon speaker is, like straight away, because she knows that the next thing I'm gonna do is turn on the radio. And then she loves like the music and stuff, and she's
Mm.
always like dancing to the music. But if I walk in and don't do it, she'll just stare up at where the speaker is and wait until I say like, Alexa, turn on whatever, and then she'll be like, she'll just relax and go about her day. But it's just madness that that's already become ingrained, and I only have that routine about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Already it's ingrained in her that like I plop down, I look up at the speaker, the music starts, and I go about my day. It's just incredible. Like,
It's amazing like what expectation does to learning, and with like and how we treat somebody when we expect or perceive their intelligence a certain way. There was this, I forgot what book this was. It might be the brain mat, I forget what it was called, but anyway, in the book they talk about how we assume kids are pretty stupid. So like when we talk to them, we talk to them in a certain way.
mm,
And there was this study that they did, psychologists and scientists did, where they would record the child's conversations that the child would have with itself, like before it got to bed and when it would wake up. And it found like through the amount of words used, the diversity of word choice, sentence construction, that the conversations a child would have with itself were far more advanced than the conversations that other people would have with kids. And it
yeah.
is true. I mean, like their learning capabilities are like you said, just like figuring out the like Alexa and the cell phone stuff, like their learning capabilities are off the chart. It's
I was
wild to
I
see.
was doing like chalk art with like 7-year-olds the other day of like, just Halloween sky or whatever. And they were using the chalk, and I'd be very conscious of that. I'd be very conscious of like I hated when I was in school being taught like as a fucking moron. So like I'll go out of my way not to do that to a child. Like, so I'll almost go too far the other way, and I'll talk to them like too high. Like as if, I'll expect a higher intelligence from them, and I'll talk to them almost as if they're an adult, like that kind of level, and then I'll need to like slowly dumb it down a bit. But
Yeah.
like there's a kid in my class was like using the chalk and then was like brushing the like extra chalk off her page. But as I walked around, just took an inhale to blow the chalk or whatever. And I stood in front of her and she was like, "Oh, I almost blew the excess on you." And I kind of stopped. And I was like, "I beg your pardon?" And she was like, "I almost blew the excess." And I was like, "What do you mean the excess?" And she was like the extra chalk. And I was like, "Right. How do you know the word excess?" It's just like I stood there for about 2 minutes being like, I wouldn't have used the word excess to
Yeah,
describe
right.
it. Like, yeah, it's cool though.
That's
Um,
cool.
what are your coffee habits like then? So I assume if you're considering branching out into some kind of coffee arm of your training and business, I assume you're an avid drinker.
So let's get in. There's short answer is I wasn't. I don't think I first started. So I'm 30. How old am I? 34. I don't think I drank my first cup of, like, I had maybe a couple sips in the past. I don't think I drank like my first full cup of coffee till I was like 32.
Whoa.
And even then it was like a small, like a demi test cup. I was actually in and this isn't to be like I was traveling. I was actually in Tel Aviv visiting a friend, and I had some Arabic coffee he gave me. And that was like the first, it was a tiny cup, but that was the first cup top to bottom I ever drank. And then I didn't sleep for the next 4 days. Um, so
What year did you start as seminar staff?
actually this Halloween will be my 10th year, my decade, my 10th year anniversary. I started at 2010,
How did
Halloween
you
of 2010.
last? How did you last 8 years on seminar staff? Because anyone I spoke to on seminar staff, like Chase, Rob, Pete, everyone was like, "Oh, it's like a rite of passage. The first thing, start a seminar, someone goes to Starbucks, gets coffee." Like, how did you go 8 years of being like, "No, I'm okay, thanks."
Yeah, well, when they would, so I didn't really love my parents grew up drinking coffee, and they were really into coffee and pour over coffee, and I hated the smell of their coffee breath,
Mm.
and so that turned me off to it. And then the second thing too is I just don't really love hot drinks.
Yeah,
And in the summertime, I remember my mom would make iced coffee, but not cold brew. But so long story short is I did used to drink things like energy drinks, which
mm.
I love to this day. I drank green tea cold. I love iced green tea. And I do drink like mostly, actually, I don't think I've ever still had like a big full cup of hot coffee top to bottom. I've had like a lot of iced coffee in the last couple
Mm.
of years. I really like iced coffee and cold brews. Um, but I love energy drinks. But I just felt like I was destroying my body and my teeth. So, I wanted to still get caffeine, and that's kind of how I came around to coffee. And at first I just drank it begrudgingly, and I really didn't like the flavor of it. And I still don't think I'm crazy about the flavor of coffee, but I notice now, like, I think I have a slightly more evolved palate than just chugging it down. So I do notice some different tastes. But how I first really got into it was my wife really likes it. And I just started I started researching it because what I do love about coffee, I love the smell, and I
Yeah,
love the ritual of it. I like
yeah, yeah.
waking up, and this is more for her. Like, I like waking up. I like grinding the beans. I like researching which beans to buy. I like weighing them out. I like, measuring the temperature of the kettle, pouring it over. It's the ritual of it, I think, is really beautiful. And so that's how I really got into it at first, was making it for her. And then because I was just trying to, I don't know, be healthier and have a better source of caffeine, I really wanted to get off energy drinks. And so I started using iced coffee a lot, or cold brew a lot more for that, and did a
Mm.
little research into cold brew and making my own, which I thought was really fun. And yeah, so
I think like my favorite question I ask regularly is like any coffee memories that stand out. Like the fact that your go-to was Tel Aviv. I'm assuming that you've been to some incredible places, or
yeah.
you've just had like ridiculous scenarios or amazing people around you. Like, is there anything that stands out in your memory banks?
As far as coffee experience,
Yeah, like even I think it kind of started out with those kind of memories of like, oh, I was in Tel Aviv and had such and such a coffee, and it was like,
yeah.
eaten by camels and shat out, and we turned it into coffee or whatever. But then after like two episodes, it kind of evolved into like, I was with such and such a person when I heard this news, and I happened to be drinking coffee at the time. That those kind of memories as well.
Mm. It's fun. I mean, so the Tel Aviv memory is really strong in my head. The other one, and I mean, it is a wonderful place, but it's not necessarily that exotic. I was down in Miami, and we were drinking Cuban coffee, which has like a lot. It's very sweet,
Mm.
and it was funny. Alfonso, the fellow I was talking about earlier, who owns Blue Mayan coffee, he was saying how there's black coffee and then there's cake. And any coffee where you're adding milk and sugar to it, you've just turned it into cake. It's now cake. And I love that analogy. And this did taste like cake. And a similar experience, I was at a seminar, and this was in Cookeville, Tennessee. Not very exotic, but a good place. And I was just trying to create small talk with the group leading the seminar. And I was talking to them about, hey, who drinks caffeine? And I was like, I really don't like the taste of coffee. And people were like, what? You don't drink coffee? And this kid comes in the next day, young man, and he's drinking a Dunkin' Donuts cup of coffee, which I don't know how familiar you are with Dunkin' Donuts, but America runs on Dunkin'. That's the slogan. But anyway, so he's like, try this. And it's this iced coffee, and he puts it in front of my face, and I drink it. And it's this Chips Ahoy, mochaccino. It tasted like a milkshake. And I was like, holy shit, if I could drink that every day without it killing me, I would. Those are probably three big experiences. I don't know if I have any like really specific memories attached to it, but I do really
There are
like,
quite specific memories there. I mean,
are they? Was that helpful?
yeah, like I think even we were in Dublin recently. We used to live in Dublin. And my first coffee was like a cookie cream Starbucks.
Oh,
So very similar. Like it was like it's as close as you can come to being cake batter in a cup, like if going off your mate's analogy. But like that was my wife was like she was my girlfriend then was like, I can't believe you've never had coffee. I was like, similar-ish to you, I guess. My parents drank like, I don't know, you have like Maxwell House and like Ken,
yeah.
those like instant
Oh,
coffee.
yeah. Yep.
And I like same, I fucking hated the smell. And it was just like it just looked so shit and smelled so weird. And I just hated it. And I assumed that that was coffee full stop.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I think I had that and I was like, wait a minute, this is like cake. This is totally fine. I could drink this
Mm.
forever. And I had loads of those. And then I slowly like they used to do a caramel macchiato where it's
Yep.
basically like
Oh, yeah.
normal coffee, but then it just has loads of syrup caramel sauce on top. So again, caramel, I'm in. And then slowly just like refined my palate a bit more, a bit more, a bit more. But I think we were up in Dublin recently and uh we stopped and I was like, oh, that's the Starbucks. That's where I had that first like
No,
cookie
that's
cream.
cool.
And like it's a totally innocuous memory, but I think it's just like those little things are cool. Like that Dunkin' Donuts story is cool, like I'd
Yeah.
say. Um
It,
I think like what was it like giving a seminar in Cookville? Is that like intimidating because of obviously you're part of the history as well, but like
yeah.
it seems to be like a mecca for I mean you've got Hinshaw, you've got
Yeah.
Rich, you've got Matt, you've got Tia. Like it's a bit mad that there's
Yeah.
that whole
It's
crew
crazy
there.
down there. Yeah, no, it wasn't intimidating. I mean, giving a seminar is intimidating not because of the location, but
Mm,
because you care about performing well in front of the people. You want to give that room of new learners everything you have. But
yeah.
Cookville was always super easy because there was a local donut shop down there called Ralph's, and then so Sunday morning, CrossFit Mayhem, the host, they would bring in Ralph's donuts for everyone. So whenever I did a seminar down in Cookville, I was getting donuts on Sunday, and then Saturday night they had a local barbecue, and they would bring in pulled pork and coleslaw, and what else was there? And I don't
I
know.
mean
I ate a lot
I'm
of pulled
sold
pork. Yeah.
already to be honest.
So that was actually working there was kick ass because of those two reasons. But yeah, it was never intimidating, and but it's super fun. I mean, especially once they moved into the old gym was great, but moving into the new gym, it is kind of like CrossFit Disneyland.
Mm.
And their new facility that Rich and the Mayhem crew just have put together down there is epic.
Yeah, it always looks incredible when you see videos or anything like and even just the people that they're churning out as well, like the people that they're helping is like it's remarkable the people that are coming out.
Dude, Haley Adams is like so crazy impressive to me. I remember I met her. I did a commentary at a regionals. Sorry to cut you off, but I did a commentary at regionals. I think she was competing as it was her first time competing as individual, and she was just like this she still is young, but just like, I don't want to say little girl because I don't want that to sound demeaning, but I was just like, she was a little kid out there, you know,
Mm,
just like, oh my God. But and she was just fierce and focused and just put out in terms of work. And now, man, I mean, it was she smashed up that first round of the games, and it was just
yeah.
cool to see because she is like, um, Kristen Holte, who I think is absolutely amazing too. But Kristen Holte, top performer, 34-year-old. I believe she's, man, maybe not that, but between 30 and 34. And then you have someone like Haley, who's like just looking at 20 years, coming up on 20
Yeah.
years. Like, the women competing in CrossFit right now are just out of this world, awesome and fit and amazing.
Yeah, but I think, like you say though as well, she doesn't look as imposing, as physically imposing as the other females. So
No.
you're lulled into this thing of like, right, what's she gonna do? Like, how's she gonna
Yeah.
perform? And then she always surpasses whatever expectation you had. Like,
Yeah, it just rips. I mean, I think Tia is similar, but like she has this like badass energy.
yeah,
But yeah. So yeah, whatever they're doing down there in Tennessee, it works.
yeah. Um, your own journey in CrossFit then, like, were you sporty growing up? Like, did you come from a sporty family, or how did that develop?
I I mean, I played a lot of sports and like I was active kid, but I didn't have like any particular talent for sport. I mean,
Mm,
I skied, I ski raced in high school. I mountain biked recreationally. I played soccer. I played lacrosse. But I wasn't like a fantastic athlete. And I also like, I don't want to say I dabbled in all of those pieces, but I was never just like out there playing all day.
yeah.
And, I played soccer probably the longest out of any sport, and I absolutely loved it. And I played it recreationally in college, and then that's kind of when I started to stumble onto CrossFit. And I just liked it gave me that competitive. I think a lot of people are like this, is able to keep up with, gave me that competitive drive and that satisfaction of staying competitive with other people or myself. And but yeah, not I wouldn't say I was like a particularly great athlete.
Mm. Like, what was it like being involved in those, like, I suppose, like the formative years of CrossFit? Because, like, I suppose now it's like a global community and there's different centers and different, like, even look at the sanctionals and the amount of, I suppose, publicity and money and stuff they generated and was spent on them, and it's just this huge like machine.
Mm.
Uh, if you think back to where it was like a handful of people, like, it must be bizarre to look back at the early days and compare them to what we have now.
Yeah, if you like go look at like the early days of like, and I bet like rugby to some extent was like this too, like just some guys just kicking a ball through like a tree that was shaped like a Y or something. But it's like in the NFL too, like football in the US, if you go look at like old videos of football, because it's still a young sport, it's like they're out there in like these leather helmets,
Yeah, yeah.
bashing into each other. That's kind of what I feel like our days of CrossFit were like. I was talking to somebody about this recently, but I have this vivid memory, and I think it was the 2010 year that we did like the sanctional qualifier for CrossFit, and it was in Albany, New York, and we did this workout. It was like 21:15:9 or something like that of chest to bar pull-ups and overhead squats. I think the weight was 135. So at that time, it was like everybody's max.
Mm.
And I just remembered the pull-ups on the rig. The rig was outside and it wasn't bolted or secured to the ground. And I just remember it's what I imagine doing chest to bar pull-ups on a freaking pirate ship would have been like. Because that side, the opposite side would pull and the rig would go this way. And
Yeah.
then they would hit the bar and the rig would come back. And I remember I smashed myself in the face on that thing. But it was just like I was up there swinging around and I was like, it's a miracle that I'm getting my chin over the bar. And it was like that kind of just sums up. And not that they weren't doing things well or headed in the right direction, but that just kind of sums up like the early competing experience for me in CrossFit. And even when we went out to the games in 2009, and this was 2 years into it, it was like the athlete area was just pretty much everyone huddled together trying to find shade in Dave Castro's family barn, you know, um, sleeping under tables and stuff like that. And then you go
Yeah.
to the games now and it's just like, it's incredible. It's incredible. And it's cool because that gives you this perspective of like massive humility and respect. It's like for any people who grew up pre cell phone, pre iPhone days, And now there are people who will only know iPhones or
Yeah.
smartphones, whatever, Samsung. But it does give you like this massive respect for the growth of it, because it's like it's so nice and cool now.
Yeah. It's glossy, like, I think.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
you
very
like
shiny.
do you ever bemoan that? Because like I know I had Matt Chan on, and he was like, those early days of the games where it was like, the weird objects and weird movements and new movements and whatever. And then he's kind of saying that a lot of it now is like not predictable, but like you can what workouts are likely to come up, who's likely to do well in them, who's likely to struggle in them. Like it kind of
Yeah.
becomes a bit more predictable, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely there's really a recipe that I think is becoming more effective at the games level. Despite, I think this year you're going to see some cool surprises. It's like I'm really excited to see what Dave and his team do to these athletes and challenge them with. And I know everyone's kind of bummed, but I think it'll be very cool to see athletes have to battle each other in this 5-person format. Like that's intimidating. But I don't know if I bemoan it. Here's what I do miss. I just miss the fact that when the community was smaller, you just knew more people in it. And I think it's just it's so big now. For me, it's harder to keep up with all the interesting stories and people joining. And it's beautiful because I have more to pick from. But because there's so much information, I just sometimes get bummed out that I can't keep up with all of it,
But that's what my job is. That's what podcasts
Exactly.
are.
Exactly.
I've heard you on a few different shows. So like you're on Power Monkey and Fuel What
Oh,
Matters and a few others. Like, is being interviewed something that you're comfortable with, or is it something that like you're eager to do, or is it something that you kind of struggle with, or maybe dread a bit, like, oh god, I have to talk about myself
huh.
now, or like, do you enjoy it?
I used to dread it a little bit just because it was like, I don't want to have to tell my story the same way over and over again.
Mm,
But I think I'm kind of like you in the sense this is also an opportunity for me to learn more about myself. Like when I get somebody who's an engaging interviewer, it kind of challenges me to think about what I want to say and how I view myself. And I also like learning about new people and your experiences, as well. And I'd like to think I've grown up in my ability to be interviewed. I think I do a better job now of trying to help steer a conversation. At least I hope I do. I might just babble and, I'm just getting high on my own supply. I think I'm so great, but I like it a lot now. Yeah, I like it a lot because you learn more about other people too, which I think is super cool.
yeah. um Going back then when you're training and you're finding your feet and you're banging your face off the bar for your chest to bar, like, can you remember a moment where you thought like, Jesus, I'm really good at this, like I'm good enough to like compete a bit higher up? Or it like a totally different experience then to maybe someone having those thoughts now, if you know what I mean?
Mm. I don't know if I ever had that thought when in 2009, I'll credit a fellow by the name of Patrick Cummings. He does a podcast now. I think it's called Open Gym,
Hmm.
but he's just like, was a photographer and just like a content artist. I think it's probably a good way to sum up Patrick. And he worked for Again Faster early on in CrossFit and was doing a lot of videos and video editing and photography and writing a lot of articles. And he just basically, this is all the point of saying, like, he had a lot of awareness of what was going on in the early community. I mean, he was one of the first people that I heard mention Rich Froning's name. He went down to one of the competitions in Florida and was like, hey, there's this kid Rich down there and he's going to win the games. And I was like, who is this country bumpkin? And then you saw Rich and you're like, holy shit, like
Yeah.
Camo shorts and headbands, man. Like we should start wearing them. But anyway, so Patrick had just said to me, hey, there's a local competition at CrossFit New England. I think you should try it. I think you do really well. And I was like, no way, man. Like, because I just wasn't in CrossFit for that purpose. And that purpose was still developing. And I went out and I did that competition and I did do pretty well. I didn't win, but I hung with some people who were pretty fit in the area. And then Patrick kind of spurred me on. He's like, you should train for what were they called? Sectionals at that time. You should train for the sectionals in 09. And I was like, sure, I'll give it a shot. And I went out there, you know, it's like anyone who's competitive never signs up to lose.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I wasn't like, I'm going to crush this thing. You know, I'm going to go to the games. Like I went out there to like, oh, let's see what I got. And I ended up winning that in 2009. And that's when I first went to the games. And then I did terrible at the games because I competed against, you know, you got to that point where it was like your weaknesses just got exposed.
Yeah.
But I don't think I ever really had that thought of like, I'm good enough to do this. It was always just like, you know, as I saw accomplishment, I moved the marker a little bit. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I did that, so I want to try and do this next. Like that was always the attitude.
Was it disheartening then, say, after the games the first time, or were you like, well, here's my weaknesses, I just have to attack them? Or is it a bit like, oh, what's the fucking point? Like that was, I really shat the bed there on that one.
No, it was exactly that. I went back home and I was like, geez, I got cut after 2 events. I was like, I have to make it back and do better.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that seems to be
Yeah.
the common thread with people who make it, is that just that fire to make it back is like that. I think a lot of people almost feel like they waste the first time maybe a bit, because they're kind of like maybe just happy to be there, and like kind of more that like, oh, look at that thing, and like there's that guy, and it's kind of a bit more, I don't know, like naive or something. And then the
Yeah.
second time they're like, right, now I fucking take it seriously this time, and really show what I've done, rather than just be, look, I made it, like.
And you want to be back in that group of people who take it as seriously as you do. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like there, you know, even when you just meet people for the first time at the games, especially then, there was just this common bond of like, of like, hell, hey, I've been there too, and it was just kind of understood without it being spoken. And, I just so badly wanted to be back there with those people and be around those people competing and learning from them and challenging them and being challenged by them. It was just like, that was a huge motivator for me.
Yeah. I think like you've done pretty much everything when it comes to like competitive CrossFit. Like, so like I was looking at your CrossFit.com profile or whatever, and it's like you've done the team series, you've done individual and team at the games, you've done the lift off, you've done regional
Oh yeah.
sectionals, like basically everything you could do, you've done. Like when you look back, is there an experience that you hold over all the others? Like maybe not even a success, but like something that you don't think you'll ever forget?
Um, well, I'll get this out of the way really quick. I mean, one of them was just watching my now at that time. Were we engaged? I don't know. But that my now wife watching Cassandra compete at the regional in the games was something I'll never forget, because I finally realized how fucking stressful it is to watch somebody you love compete that hard at something. Like because it had always been me competing, and I'm like, how
Yeah.
hard I'm doing all the work. How hard is it for them? And I watched her compete, and I was like, I never want to do that. I mean, I would want to do that again to have her enjoy that accomplishment, but I probably ripped 90% of my hair out that weekend. Just because
Even
I
when you
was,
see Matt O'Keefe and Sammy watching Matt Fraser,
yeah.
like they're genuinely exhausted at the end of the week. Like,
Well, it's like whenever, because Shane Orr, he's so emotional. Like that
yeah,
dude, I feel like he's just spent, and he's super composed and smart. And I'm not discrediting him, but he's like, that dude's crying all the time at the games, like, and for good reason. You're right. Yeah, I can't imagine how emotional that is.
yeah,
Oh, I can. That was definitely a huge moment for me, and just because I love so much about the sport, and it's been so great to me. So to watch somebody I care about that much experience it too is like really cool feeling.
mm,
Um, Personal competing experiences, there's probably 3 or 4 really big ones that stand out, and the first one was the 2009 trail run, the
yeah.
7K trail run in Aromas around Castro's Ranch. And
I'd
because
say
I
we'll
was there,
probably see that in a couple of weeks again.
yeah, I can't wait. I'm so excited because
Yeah,
I think, and Dave doesn't have the perspective. And I've asked him, I said, Dave, do you just like sit down and think, how can I crush the shit out of these people? How can I just mash them up? And he said, no, that's never my goal. And he said, his goal is to, one of the things he said, among other things, my goal is to, have the athletes be pushed a little bit beyond a point where they think they can go,
yeah,
but also, have a point where it's like they can realize that they have another gear, another level. And I
yeah,
think that's such a cool way to approach it, because, and if you look at the games, I think he does, and his team does a really good job of that, because I think the athletes end up surprising themselves sometimes. And granted, they get crushed a lot of the time too, but that's the nature of competition. But that 7K trail run, I was out there competing with people that, you know, I had really looked up to, that were, you know, internet famous for me, you know, the Jason Kalipas, the Chris Spielers, Pat Barber, and a lot, you know, long list of other athletes. And I remember on the running past Kalipa as he like fainted and fell into the ground. And I was like, oh my God, this is killing the 2008 games championship. I was like, I'm going to die out here.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool experience, just because of like having mindfulness in that moment of like, for me, these were people I really looked up to, and to just be out there and experiencing that level of suck with them was super appreciable and really special for me. So that's probably one of the biggest moments that sticks out in my head. You know, like I can even just remember.
You should lead with, oh, definitely 2009 when I ran past Khalifa as he fainted. That should just be
Yeah.
your, and then
Yeah.
even don't elaborate on it. Just be like, next question. You know, just
Yeah,
leave
right.
it.
That's it. That's when yeah, but then the problem was I got cut after 2 events. He finished that run and then came back and deadlifted 500 and something pounds.
Yeah.
So that was incredible.
Yeah.
And, you know, what are some other ones?
I heard you mention a point, was it 2012 maybe, where there was an event and Rich turned just when
That
the
was
event was being described. And
15. Yeah.
yeah, and Rich was like, we can win this now.
Yeah. That was one. I mean, I've told that one a couple of times, but man, it was one, you know, like when they talk about like, you see your own destiny, and that's probably a really corny way to sum it up, but it really was this moment of like, he said that to me. And then all of a sudden I was like, I saw that glimpse, that one possible future where it was like, if we do this and this, we're going to win the games.
Does it carry extra pressure though when he's saying it? Like, it must. You must be like,
No,
oh fuck, he thinks we're gonna win, and what if I mess it up? Like,
no. And I think that was and I think that was like one of the things we did well as a team. I think, you know, despite Rich's accomplishments up until then, I think we all felt that pressure toward each other.
yeah, okay,
You know, it was shared in every direction, and which was really cool, which was really, really cool. And yeah, I mean, that weekend was crazy for us. I mean, our first event was not, we slowly just chipped away, you know, climbed the
yeah.
ladder. And it was, you know, the last event, Rich looks up at the scoreboard and turns around and goes, hey, you know, we can win right now. And it was like a worm grace. And we did, you know, and that feeling of winning that event was, I'll remember that forever. Because like, not only was it the joy of winning, but it was like truly visibly seeing the goal, being on the precipice of the goal, and then taking that last step to get over, you know, consciously taking it. And then you were there, it's just super rewarding having all that come together.
Yeah. Well, like when you joined up with them, like, so you had been to the games already on a team, like you've been on your own and you've been on a
Mm-hmm.
team. Um, like, am I right in assuming that maybe it's a misconception because now I look at Mayhem and I see them as like the pinnacle of like, you know, they've got this elite kind of almost academy vibe to it. Like it's so like everything's kind of glossy and like, you know, everything looks really well thought out. Everything looks really well financed in there. It's really, everything's like done properly. And I know I've heard loads of stories about like that. If you're on a team with Rich, you move, like basically live there. You know, you're part of the family. You do everything together. Like, was it when you joined the team? Were you kind of expecting that kind of experience, and did you get it, or has that since developed? Do you think?
Oh, it's definitely developed. And
Mm.
but I will say I mean, and this had to do with not just Rich's, but everybody down there who trained with him. You know, from guys like Matt Hewitt to Easy Muhammad, to when Dan Bailey was down there. There was definitely just this ecosystem of fitness at Mayhem, and the Mayhem family, whether it was Rich's family, coaches at the gym, his
Mm.
cousin Darren, they were all just super supportive of it. So, you know, if we needed to go train at Tennessee Tech, we could go do that. If we needed to go swim, we could go up to his dad's. If we needed to go eat somewhere, someone was having dinner and invite us, you know, and we would travel as a pack. Um, it's definitely, you know, as the resources have improved, I think it's definitely gotten nicer.
Mm.
But, you know, from day one, there was just this understanding as we all got down there and we're getting ready to compete, that the goal was to create a team environment that was a championship team environment. And that didn't just mean coming in and training your ass off. That just meant, creating an entire ecosystem and lifestyle around that.
So like professional sport bit, like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
reaching for that level at least.
Yeah. And, you know, and we did treat it that way. I mean,
Mm.
sometimes people joke like, how do you, I remember someone once asked me, they were following the What is Rich Doing, or the What is Rich Doing programming. And they stopped me at a seminar and they said, how do you guys get all this stuff done in an hour? And I thought he was like making a joke. And I was like, what do you mean, man? And he said, how do you do all that work in an hour? And I said, what do you mean an hour? I said, it takes us 8 hours. It takes us all day. Like, there's this part, and then there's snack time, and then there's sit around and bullshit time, and there's stretchy time, and then there's recover time and nap time, and then there's this workout. It's
Yeah.
like, it's a full-time job. And I do think like Rich and Mayhem, they kind of, for the teams, um, and now they really changed that for the team competition. And whereas like Rich and certainly Matt now, and Tia and a handful of other individuals, have made that clear that is the goal on the individual side. I mean, it was your profession.
Yeah, I think as well though it'd be like, I'm not discrediting any team who came before or who will come again, but I think like it added an element that it was rich, like because he achieved so much in the individual, it added an element of like kind of, I don't know, a gravitas or something to the team competition that, like, this, I think a lot of people maybe thought like when he stopped, they were like, oh God, he must be finished. Like, he must
Yeah.
be like running scared and he's done or whatever. And then I think when he started with the teams, and it just seemed to lift that to a new level as well, where it got like way more attention. Like I've talked to teen athletes and stuff, and age group athletes who went to the games anticipating that, like, yeah, we're not going to get the same attention. Like, and I think maybe in the past teams might have done that as well. Whereas now it's like, oh, now the teams is pretty fucking serious, like, because it's that professionalism, I suppose, that he brings to it, and the attention, and the, there's more videos and more photos, more, more worldwide competitions as well. Like the teams are a big part of the sanctionals now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That definitely helped it. And, and I think a couple other things help it. I think the teams were 4-person. It was an evolution of the competition that has helped drive it, because it's just easier to follow, program for,
Mm.
execute. Not that the 6-person team format was bad. I do think for a lot of reasons the 4-person is better. The induction of super teams was a huge pull to it. Yeah, I just wish even more super teams. And one of the things I always loved about what we did is that our name was our affiliate.
Mm.
I wish more of the super teams would tie that back to affiliates, because one of the things I did really love about the early affiliate cups is you were pointing at specific gyms, regardless of the players for that. And I get that sponsors got to make their buck or whatever. But I always loved, seeing this, like, oh damn, the people of that affiliate, they're a bunch of badasses. And I hope there's like a resurgence in that.
Yeah, it'd be cool if they picked like a really small affiliate that nobody knew, and people were like, "Who the fuck is training out of this place?" Like,
Yeah, right. I
yeah.
think that's super cool.
I like. I think when I think of you, I think of like that team, like that competition, and then the more I kind of researched it, I think I was surprised. I didn't realize until uh, Pete said it, that you had programmed the Southfit that
Mm.
punched his ticket. Like, is there a weird kind of, like, say when you were at those competitions yourself, did you envisage, like, did you ever have that kind of moment of uh foreseeing that you felt with the workout with Rich? Did you ever have that with like your career, where you thought like, okay, well, when I slow down with competing, I think I might program, I think I might coach, I think I might, like, was there a plan in place, or is this kind of similar to other CrossFit staff who maybe have said yes to the right opportunities, or to every opportunity, and then most of them turn out to be good, and they're in, like, the common phrase that I hear a lot, especially from seminar staff, is, Oh, it's just right place, right time. I just said yeah, and then I
Yeah.
showed up and I did the work, and I said yeah again, and I showed up and I did it again. Like, did you have a plan in place when you were slowing down with competing, or did it just kind of evolve because you were there and you were willing?
Yeah. It's a combination of both.
Fucking hell, that was a
It
long
wasn't.
way to ask that question.
No, it was you. No, I think you phrased it really nicely, and it is. I really, and this sounds corny, but I just really like CrossFit. It's like I've liked the people. I like what it does. I believe in the program. I like the competing aspect of it. And that's not to say that I don't think it can evolve and get better over time, but I just really enjoy it. And so at that time in competing, it's like I just had this big desire. I just, I wanted to imbibe more of what the community had to offer
Mm.
and see it from a different perspective. And so I didn't have a plan of necessarily what I wanted to do. And someone asked me once, they said, well, are you going to keep, what are you going to do next? And I said, well, I can't just keep winning affiliate cup championships the rest of my life. And, maybe I should have done that. But there was this feeling for me that when me, Rich, and Matt were together, we just weren't going to fucking lose.
Yeah.
And Lindy and Ellie and Kristen, same thing. I just was like, we're not going to lose. Whatever vibe and relationship we had, it just, and that's not an arrogant thing to say, but it was just like, felt very full. My competitive cup, I thought at that time, felt very full. And I had wanted to do other stuff in the community, and the amount of effort that I believed you should put into competing, if I was going to keep competing, wasn't going to allow me to do other stuff as well. And,
That's interesting though, because I think most people, either it's the fear of not going out on top, or it's like the, I don't know, like the greed nearly, that they like, that they need to keep with, that they don't want to give it up. Like,
yeah,
I think it's interesting that you didn't have a fear of knocking out on top, and you overcame the kind of easy, not easy like to win, I mean, but easy decision of like, well, I'm going to keep winning, so I'll just keep doing it. Like, I
yeah.
think it's interesting that you saw like, yeah, we're probably going to keep winning, but Jesus, is it really what I want? Like, I've kind of proven it now. I can move on with my life. I think it's interesting that like that's how it came about.
Well, I think for me, it was like, and I don't want to, I think there was still some greed in the sense of like, I didn't, there probably was more I could have done in the sport, but it was like, I got to the top of that competing mountain for me, and I saw another peak, over
Yeah.
there in the clouds. And I was like, well, what happens if I took all of this energy, commitment, discipline, vigor that I'm putting into competing, and I put that somewhere else? What else could I accomplish? And I think that's kind of how it rolled for me. And so it's like, post, and the funny thing is, like, I definitely still, like, I love competing, and I miss the feeling of competing hard, and I'm still competitive. But I think I've done and it's taken me time to get there and be okay with it. But I think I've done a good job of placing it into other parts of my life. And I can't say that, like, my perspective on it now, you're seeing the report with hindsight bias, and
Yeah.
me having, like, worked through this for the last now 3 years really, and come to understand what it means for me and my identity. And there were bumps along the way where I was like, oh shit, I should still be competing. Or like, what's the point? Days where you're like, what's the point of training if you're not going to win?
Yeah.
If you're not
I
training to
think
win.
it becomes, like you say there, it becomes entangled with people's identity, where like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you become your business, or you become your athlete, or that's it. Like that, I suppose, even if other people don't just see you as that, you fear that maybe they do, and if I'm not that, then what am I like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And it's like, I went through all that, and still sometimes I struggle with it. I find myself saying, like, well, if I'm not training and competing to win the CrossFit Games, then why should I train and compete so often? And then, you got to remind yourself that when I first started CrossFit, I just did it because I liked testing myself to see how far I could go, what my body could take. I liked
Mhm.
the physical improvements it gave me, the mental improvements it gave me. And I just liked competing, whether I was competing against you in a class, regionals floor, games floor, like, digitally across the open. Like, I just liked that, like, hey, let's step out and see what you got. Like, I just
Mhm.
enjoyed that process.
I think as well though, if people only competed to win the games, fuck all people would do CrossFit because it's such a small percentage.
Exactly. And that's an easy thing to forget when you're trying to compete at that level.
Yeah, yeah.
And like you said, you get so wrapped up in your identity. But when I had finally stopped and looked back on even then where I had been in CrossFit, seminar staff, coaching, teaching other people, programming for other people, it's like I was like, I still have a lot of areas that make up who I am and that I got to flesh out. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I didn't necessarily have a plan, but I knew there was like, I wanted to take that positive energy that I had from competing and pour that over some other projects and some other goals, and see how those grew.
Yeah. You've got the Hamplan, which is offering you the chance to coach remotely, I suppose, as well as like,
Mm.
in the gyms that you program for and stuff. But like, I mean, if 2020 is leading to any avenues opening up, it's surely online coaching. So like
Yeah.
this, surely business is booming this year with like so many people's scenarios changing and stuff. Like, do you find it challenging programming in that way, or do you think it's a bit easier because I suppose now like people will know who you are, they'll know like where you're coming from, they'll like not know what to expect. I mean, but like they'll, to a certain extent, they'll anticipate what the program might be like, and they can trust. I suppose there's that like
Mm.
maybe it's easier than someone starting fresh. Like, do you think is it difficult for you to uh like, do you find yourself being challenged, or do you think it's kind of like, I know so much, like not that you know everything, but it's like I know so much that
Yeah.
like, and people know what to expect as well, that it kind of, it's easy, it's like you're on a train track almost.
No, it's definitely challenging. And especially this year, I've certainly learned that, I guess here's an example. So, you said you're a teacher,
Hmm.
and imagine if the only way you could teach was just write out a curriculum and throw it into somebody's lap. Mostly online coaching, remote programming is a lot of that.
Yeah.
And the flip side of it, me getting you in the gym and teach, whether it's you want to be just fit for life or fit for the games, me getting you in the gym and coaching you face to face and saying, slow down, stop, go faster, don't do that, do this, here's your programming. That's you teaching to a class of kids face to
Hmm.
face. I like the face to face option way more. I like doing in-person coaching development way more. What has been the biggest challenge about doing online coaching is trying to retain the passion that you have and the passion that you transmit in teaching in an online format, and keeping that passion to keep yourself ignited. Like, I love transferring knowledge. I love sharing my experience, strength, and hope. But man, I would be lying to you if I said that it's always exciting to do it when I'm just grinding through Excel spreadsheets or writing out class plans day after day. Like, that part of it's hard.
is it
That's what
is
I
it
think the hard part of it is.
is it kind of similar then to, you ask most people like, oh, how do you find the motivation or whatever, and the answer generally is like, oh, it's not always motivation, like it's discipline, and then the motivation ebbs and
Dude.
flows.
Yeah. So the other day, I wasn't I was complaining significantly about, I'm not motivated to work out, because I was talking to my wife, motivated to work out, blah, blah, blah. And she looks at me and she goes, you can't always rely on motivation. She said, you need discipline. And I was like, fuck, like, whoa, thank you.
Yeah.
I think and that quote, now we have like this little whiteboard, and that quote just now sits over there over our kitchen table.
Yeah. I
But
know.
it's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. Yeah. You need to develop the habit. You need to have the discipline. And a good buddy of mine, Brian Shantosh, um, who I've learned a lot from this year, and he's had a lifetime of leadership experience. And he always says, you got to remember the future. He's like, you need to remember those moments where you did quit and how bad you felt afterwards, or when you did give up or give less than you could and how crappy you felt afterwards. And you always find yourself saying, well, if I could do that over again, I would do this. And the truth is, in life, you have tons of do it overs, but you have to remember that future of how shitty you felt when you only gave half effort. And it's true. Sometimes you need to rely on that discipline in those memories. And like I said, I find that a lot, just because, especially with COVID, and I'm very grateful for the fact that I'm still working pretty busily right now. But man, just like everybody else, like, you miss that human to human contact. Like, there's just nothing like that, especially as a teacher. I mean, that's, I think, why we do what we do, is because, like, just for that moment of that one little brief witness of seeing that light bulb go off in somebody's head. It's like, oh, that was worth all the hours of toil.
Yeah.
And it's been a learning experience for how to identify that remotely. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've gotten back, so like seminar staff are kind of back in business now the last while. Like, uh, is that giving you that outlet that you were maybe missing in your, like, say, in the Hamplan coaching, where a lot of that had to be distant now? Is it kind of like, oh, I can finally, like, take the reins again and actually do it in person?
Yeah, yeah, no, no. Seminar staff, definitely fills that cup big time.
Yeah.
That and coaching in my affiliate
And then,
is
like,
amazing.
how did you so how did you end up, I suppose, first of all, starting off in seminar staff? Because you're coming up on 10 years. So is Rob, I think. He's 10 years this year as well.
Yeah,
So uh how did you start off in seminar staff, and then how did you end up as a flow master then?
you're right place, right time.
It's yeah, that's it.
Um, so for me, just a quick story. You know, um, so the first CrossFit gym, official CrossFit gym that I really coached at was CrossFit Boston. I
Mhm.
moved down to Boston from where I grew up in 2008. And I met Neil Thompson, who at that time was the owner of CrossFit Boston. I basically just asked him for a job, and we had some connections through some other people. And so I started coaching there part time. They would periodically host the old style CrossFit trainer level 2 course. And through that, I met people who were on staff. Eva Claire Sinkowski, who was a longtime seminar staff flow master, and she did a lot of back end stuff. But she was coaching at CrossFit Boston, so I met her. And then John Gilson, who was also on seminar staff at that time, and both of them are no longer on seminar staff, but he was coaching at CrossFit Boston. So I had some touch points with CrossFit
Mm.
seminar staff, and had made it a personal goal of mine to try and make it on seminar staff, especially, and received a lot of help through them. And I just, at that time, I wasn't
Why
able,
did you want to do it so badly?
because the simple reason is I believed in the program.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, I really loved what it did for me in my life, and I wanted to share that with other people.
Yeah.
I think when I look back on it and people are like, well, what would you have done if you hadn't found CrossFit? I would have taught something. I would have been
Mm.
some kind of teacher.
You did law, didn't you?
I did finish law school. Yeah.
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 It's a big jump, I think. Like, what was your family's reaction to finishing law school and being like, "Oh, I'm working at a gym in
Yeah.
Boston"?
I have an incredible mother. And,
Yeah.
she was always one of those people who was like, you're either in school or you're working or you can't live at home. She was like, but she was always super supportive as long as I was productive,
Mm.
whatever the avenue was that I said, hey mom, I'm not going to become a lawyer, but I really want to coach CrossFit. And she was super supportive of that.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing too is I wouldn't have the life I believe in CrossFit that I have now if I didn't go to law school, because law school was the thing that brought me to Boston. And coming to Boston was really where I started meeting, a lot of people who would go on to take pretty big steps in CrossFit. That's where I met everyone at CrossFit Boston, multiple seminar staff, the entire Reebok company. That's where I met, Ben and Heather from CrossFit New England, and it's just like so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Without that, I wouldn't have been where I was at now. So
Um,
that was big.
like, I think your most recent, I suppose, development in the sport has been like the establishment of the advisory
Mm.
panel, which you're on. Um, right place, right time, or how did that how did that arise as a development?
Um, No, so I mean, I've worked in different, since I've been on seminar staff for 10 years. So I've worked for the company across it for a decade, and I've done other stuff for them in that time. I've worked on their media team. I've worked with the games team a handful of times, assisting and supporting them in different roles. And, I think for some reason they thought I was a good qualified fit to be on that team. It's Neil Maddox and Annie Thorsdottir and Meredith Root. All just very accomplished competitors, but also just super sharp and discerning minds when it comes to competition and where it sits and what it's supposed to do inside of our sport. So that's been another fun way to just be involved in the community, and valuable way for me to be involved in the community and give back.
If you're like, I I get the impression from talking to you that it's like serious, deep, ingrained love of like the methodologies and
Mm.
everything like that. Like, did it hurt twice as much then with all the controversy and everything that was happening? Like, was it like twice as hard to take, do you think, when you're so in when it's so intertwined with your life? Like,
Yeah, it was hard. Everything that occurred with the controversy, around Greg's Twitter statements, and then what came out afterward in the media. Um, but the other thing was, I've been very fortunate, and I've said this before. I think one of the things that we don't and haven't always done well as a company is we've always shined the light outwards, I feel like, and we haven't always done a really great job of shining the light on the bright spots in our company. Like, I have just had the amazing perspective. Hey, look, our seminar staff team, if you go down the list of those people, and if you, let's say you just look at what they did before they got on seminar staff, it's chock full of academics and accomplished athletes, and like, it's just, you've interviewed Rob as a great example. I mean, just the caliber of people on that staff, men, women, any corner of the globe, doesn't matter. It's second to none. They're amazing. And same thing. I mean, there's examples of that at CrossFit Media team and the CrossFit Games team. And I've had the unique perspective of seeing for years how hard everyone works in CrossFit to give back to the community and get things right for the community. And also do that work without looking for any thank you or any acknowledgement. So, long story short, this is really me just saying, like, yeah, it was a terrible thing to have happen. It's hard to see infighting in a community you love, but I also knew, like this isn't the end of us. Like, this small blip of bad doesn't come close to the amount of good that exists in the community and that I've seen on every corner of the planet. So yes, it was terrible, and you don't want to see that or have to deal with that. But it also was like, it was not reflective of who we are, what we do, what we had accomplished up until then.
yeah, I think as well, like we spoke off off air, I suppose you say, about like the political landscape in America, and I think one of the things you said was like, which resonates here, of like, if something shit happens, but hopefully like it leads to something good. And I
Yeah,
think, like, obviously it was like awful, like you say, the controversy and the just ridiculous things that were said, and then everything horrible that came out afterwards, and the accusations and the proven accusations and everything. But like, if it leads to someone like Eric, who, as far as I can tell, and anyone that I've spoken to, is like, one, that dude is fucking fit. He loves CrossFit. He knows it, and he's like wants to improve it and make it better and bigger. And then I think things like that, the athlete advisory panel, and then you've got, Brent is setting up the um, athletes association and stuff. Like, I think
yeah, the PFA. Yep.
yeah, like those kind of improvements, like, it goes back to what we spoke about, Rich, with professionalism. Like, you can only be professional, you can only be considered a professional sport and a professional involved in the sport, whether it's media or staff or seminar or whatever, if there's professionalism across the board, rather than just like, oh well, they just do their own thing, and that no one ever checks in on that guy, he just, that's what he does. Like, I think it has shone a light, like you said, not only on like the achievements or the efforts of people, but I think like on what people are actually doing. Like, and it's kind of
Yeah.
made maybe that uh introspective that CrossFit needed, of like, well, shit, how are we treating athletes, and how are we treating spectators, and how are we treating like volunteers, and affiliate owners and stuff like that. I think there are questions that maybe needed to be asked for a while, and I think it's good that out of a tornado of shit, we've got like a nice little, those nice little nuggets of goodness that are coming out of it. I think it's exciting to see that happening.
Yeah, there's just so much. Yeah, there's a lot of positivity in our community, and And I don't think that's going anywhere. And unfortunately, I think it would take a lot more than what happened with earlier this year to undo that or erase that. So
Yeah.
like, I know that kind of sounds like a really political answer, but it is just what I believe and what I've seen the world over. And you don't, they say, like, if you travel to a bunch of different cities and you think that everybody in those cities were a bunch of dickheads, that it's not the cities, it's you.
Yeah.
I've had the exact opposite happen. It's like, I've been fortunate enough through seminar staff to travel to almost every continent on the planet. And, I've always left thinking, wow, 2 days is not enough time to get to know these people as much as I would like. And it's like, that's a testament to people who are going inside CrossFit gyms and signing up for seminars and just, the community in general, like, that's a really cool thing.
Almost
Really cool thing.
every continent. That fucking Antarctican CrossFit affiliate just won't do.
So I think the station was called McMurdo Station. You laugh, but it's like they had an affiliate down there for a little while. And I would every once in a while send to the media team or send to our admin team for seminar staff. I said, don't pay me, just cover my travel. I said, let me go down there and do a fucking seminar.
Just be you and one person and a penguin.
Who cares, man? That would literally be the lowest spot on earth. I mean, like, to be like, hey, I did a seminar in Antarctica. Like, how cool would that be?
Yeah. Now I'm anticipating. I'm already like, fuck, is there penguins in Antarctica or is that the Arctic? I'm already anticipating messages being like, there's no fucking penguins there.
Yeah. But still, it would be really awesome.
The advisory panel and the athlete advisory panel, like what's happened so far with that? Is it kind of like, is it an answer to the PFA being set up, or is it like, was it always planned anyway and then both just happened to, because I know they were announced like, or they both came to light, let's say, at pretty much the same time. Was it like CrossFit maybe like HQ anticipating that, like, oh shit, we better do something here because the athletes aren't happy?
Yeah.
Or was it like, oh, the athletes are setting up a panel, we better do something as well?
I don't think it was in response to the PFA. I think the athlete advisory panel perhaps has developed, I think CrossFit as a sport now is mature enough to have something like that. I don't think the athlete advisory panel would have been something that would have been terribly productive, say 2015. But I think now the sport is at a point, and it has, continually grown resources where the athlete advisory panel can be meaningful, useful and insightful. And, it's probably good. And I don't think it like oversteps, my pay grade to say, like, we're not involved in every single detail of the season, but I think we are there to provide continued insight and greater insight into the athlete experience, whether it's the actual showing up and competing, the actual doing the workout, perception of how do we see the competition flowing and how do we feel it affects us.
Also, it could be like, what did you think of the warm-up area? What improvements could have been made in your opinion? Those kind of questions.
And I would say, like, yeah, like, there's a lot more logistical discussion. There's not a ton of discussion on, like, well, do you think the overhead squat should be 185 or 225?
Yeah.
There's really, and the reason I think that is, I think the games team has a really nice handle on how that works.
Yeah.
There's some little chat about some movement stuff, but a lot of it is like logistical stuff, searching for parity and fairness in competitions. And especially in this year, which has been really unique, we probably had to set some precedent, which hopefully we don't have to use again in a couple of years, just because of doing the stage one, of the games all online. There was a lot of thinking that had to go into that to try to make it as equitable for everyone across the globe, because there was time domain, equipment resourcing, judge resourcing, a lot of stuff that had to happen in order to make that stage occur and go off well.
Yeah. With your own competitive streak then, when you're do you think you caught a bug programming the Southfit championships? Is that something you're going to revisit?
Revisit programming for a sanctional again.
Yeah, or like a large scale.
Yeah.
Like, if there's no sanctions.
Yeah, I hope we get the chance to do it again. I mean, not only was Southfit was great because the two sanctional heads down there, they were absolutely amazing. And, you know, they've run that competition for multiple years, and from soup to nuts, it was just really smooth.
Yeah.
And they provided us really insightful feedback as far as, you know, running programming for events and logistically making events happen at that scale, which was a really good learning experience for us. And we loved it. I would love to do that again, just because, again, you care about it. And I think as an athlete too, you go through enough like struggle where you're in the middle of a workout and you're like, gosh, I would love to just kick everybody's ass with this workout someday. So you do, you know, I spent a fair amount of my time competing, thinking about how fun would it be if I got to program and torture everybody. But yeah, I would love to do that again. And hopefully, you know, I still think it'll be a little while before we see events that big. But I think we'll get back there.
Yeah, even events, maybe not with the audiences, but like as in on-site audiences. But I think you could definitely get 30 people in a room, and you know, well, 60, I suppose. Everyone needs a judge. I finished with a quick fire.
Oh boy, these always. Sometimes I write these down.
All right.
I'll just go off the cuff, and maybe you'll have to delete this whole portion of it.
You write them down, as in like, if you're in a quick fire and someone asks you a question, you'll write down answers.
Just like one quick word. I'll write down one word just so I can process it. Okay. All
right. That's because that does not sound like a quick fire if you're taking notes. And like,
well, you got to cheat to win, right?
That's the Mayhem way, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's it.
Coaching
was our motto. We had it over our door every day we'd walk in.
Cheat to win. Coaching or competing?
We'll say coaching right now in my life.
Yeah. Coffee or energy drinks? I edited that question specifically because I knew anything else would be too easy for you to answer, as I knew this would be harder.
Oh, dude, I know. I mean, if you said like hot coffee and cold coffee,
that's what it was, and I changed it.
Yeah, cold coffee. I was like, anyone who drinks, you know, everyone who drinks hot coffee, you are the toughest sons of guns on planet Earth. I mean, for my health, coffee, but God, I would love the taste of energy drinks. So I gotta just say that.
Why do you have a perception that you have to be tough to drink hot coffee?
Hot drinks, man. They're not for me. They're not for me.
Like, to be fair, it's October here now and it's brisk. So like
it's getting brisk here too. I'll drink iced coffee in December.
Yeah. Maybe there's something wrong with you then. Maybe that's
that's a good example of it, right? Everybody else in the world's got it right. I got it wrong. I wouldn't be surprised.
You're the guy going to all the other cities calling everyone a dickhead.
What bunch of dickheads? No, it's just that Hobart guy's a real jackass.
Snatch or clean?
Snatch.
Team or individual?
Oh. Right now, individual.
Chipper or sprint?
Chipper. That's easy.
What three men will stand on the podium in the Aromas?
I think Noah, Fraser. Who's that really young kid? Madero? Who's the kid who's 21?
Justin Medeiros. He's
let's see him do it, man.
Oh, I fucking love him. He was on this, and he is so calm and collected and modest, and
good.
He's like a perfect Venn diagram of just like someone who's really nice, but also really capable of like really doing really great things. Like, he's so like unassuming, but like I remember he told me that he was like, oh, I did a competition, I was really shit at wall balls, so I did like 150 wall balls like a few times a week for a while. I was just like, what the fuck? But like, it's paying off. Like, you know, he's got a big future.
And he's coming out of Fort Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've always been. Adam up there as I've known him forever because he's always competed in team.
Yeah,
so,
he's
sure.
Coach. Yeah,
let's get Justin on the podium. I think Fraser's gonna be really hard to beat.
Yeah, same. What three women then will stand on the podium?
I'm just gonna say, Tia, Haley, and Brooke.
Yeah,
Brooke Wells looked her fitness, like she's put it all together, I think, finally. I don't want to say finally. That might undercut her effort as an athlete. I just feel like she's a way more well-rounded athlete than she's ever been.
Yeah, I think she learned a lesson last year. I think she
Yeah.
kind of
So,
like, what's that phrase that life keeps
oh,
giving you the same lessons over and over again until you learn them.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think, I think she seems to have surrounded herself with like highly capable athletes as well. Like she's got Will Morad,
Yeah. She's down in
Alex
Nashville, right?
Smith,
Yeah.
yeah, and what do you call them, Street Horner, all like they all seem to be
Yeah.
training together. So that's bound to give you a bit of a push as well.
Yeah. And that Trivium gym, it's owned by two guys who compete as masters athletes too. So it's just like a gym full of just weapons.
Mm. Cool. Well, listen, thanks a million.
Yeah.
This was great. This is yeah, I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So like I said, if you want to, if you find value in the whole thing, I don't think I said anything too crazy.
No. Well,
But
that racist rant that you went on in the middle, I'm gonna have to cut that out.
I appreciate you accommodating me, because I totally blew the timeline the other day. So
No problem. It was worth it. If I
much.
ever start making money off the podcast, you'll see me at a level 1 seminar someday.
Great, can't wait. I hope. Yeah, I hope. And if
Yeah.
I'm ever up in, you said you're just, I forgot the name of your town.
Mullingar, Dublin would be where
Mullingar,
the seminars are on. I think CrossFit Green hosts them all the time. I think that's the most common one I've seen anyway.
Well, if I'm ever up in the area, I will. Mullingar, there you are.
Yeah, that's me.
Some nice little lakes around you.
Can you see me waving?
Yeah. Yeah, there you're on the Google satellite. But hell yeah, man. Peter, appreciate it a lot.
Cool. Thanks a million. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, stay well, and best to your family.